Hello, all my biology students. Today is going through the introductory video of what I expect this week and the lessons that you'll be covering. Uh, this week, Friday is Good Friday, and it is technically a day off at the school, even though really every day is kind of a day off these days. Anyway, there's only 4 days worth of material to go over so that you do have that day off. Um, and then next week, we'll talk about transcription, translation, how we make proteins from DNA. So this week we're finishing mitosis and going to go through meiosis. In other words, how do we make cells in our body and how do we make sex cells, which are slightly different. All right, so just a couple of things to keep in mind. Grading wise, last week was kind of new to the online lessons. So basically, if you did it, you got full credit. It was made more to be a formative lesson. In other words, they were classroom points, which really aren't worth that much for your quarter grade. As long as you did it, you got full points. Uh, this week, we're going to look more at what you learned and what you're doing. So I'm going to be a little bit more harsher on my grading, making sure you're doing it correctly. I noticed one thing with the Google Forms and those little quizzes there. Some people didn't do very well on that. You were allowed to use your notes and, basically the power of the internet to find answers. There's really no reason to get those wrong. So make sure you're putting a little bit more effort into these notes quizzes and things like that. And if you do have problems with it, you can email me and I will help you out. So keep that in mind. Uh, so when you see lessons that are labeled formative, like up here in our first day, it says 10 points formative. Formative is teacher jargon for its classwork. And classwork uh, is a smaller amount of your quarter grade. So not a huge issue if you don't do well on them. But, if you don't do well on them, then you don't do well on summative assignments. Summative is teacher jargon for test grades. And this week we will have a test grade, even though we won't have like a real test. Mostly at this point, we'll be doing projects, and those will be substituting your tests. I go through all this grading stuff, knowing that I'm filming this on Saturday to give to you at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, knowing I'm going to have a meeting Monday at 12 p.m. to say, okay, this is how grading is going to happen. So there may be some changes on that, though I suspect that'll be more for the end of the quarter grade, not so much as the day-to-day grading. So anyway, let's go through this week's lessons so that you know what to do, where to find things, and you can get this done. So first off, we're going to, day one, do a mitosis online lab. So you'll find a Google form. Actually, I gave you a paper form of this one. I think it's called the Incredible Internet Activity. So basically, you're just going through the phases of mitosis. So you'll find on Google Classroom the actual form that you're going to fill out and submit to me for the grade. I have given you a little video here to go through the online site, so you're spending your time actually learning the material and not trying to figure out how to do the website. So watch that first. It'll make your job a lot easier on filling out that form. All right, day two. Uh, we are going to do some Meiosis notes. So I put a little video of the Meiosis notes. So there are a Google Slides notes. I'll put the Google Slide file on Google Classroom so you can have that available to you. However, I do go through the video notes so you understand what they mean. It seems like some people had some issues with the mitosis notes. They didn't know really what was going on. So just to help you with a nudge to know what's going on there, I gave you a little video there. So watch that. And then I would go through the Google Slides on Google Classroom, have that open. I would go through those notes on your own, kind of reminding yourself what I talked about in the video. And while that file is open, I would then take the flip note quiz here. So that's a Google Forms. So when you do that, it'll actually give you the answers of what you got right or wrong to help you out there. But again, use your notes, use other information, which I did give you some other resources there to look at to do that. When you get done with that, I would like you to fill out the form comparing mitosis versus meiosis. It's a document that you'll find on Google Classroom. Basically, it puts out, okay, this is what goes on in mitosis, and this is how meiosis is different. Again, check out the Google Slides notes on meiosis. There's a nice slide just on that issue. And again, there's additional resources available to you as well to fill out those two forms. All right. Day 3, we're going to look at what's called karyotypes. So karyotype is a picture of chromosomes that you would look at generally for a baby or an unborn baby. They would get cells from that baby, and then they would look at the chromosomes, evaluate the chromosomes for birth defects, sex of the baby, and things like that. So I gave you a little video, some online notes again on just karyotyping. What does it mean? And then you'll have a little activity to do, human internet karyotyping. That's found on Google Classroom. So open that up. The internet site that you'll need to go to will be linked there. But again, I gave you a video tutorial of the website, so how to fill out the form. So to speed things up on how that internet site works, just click there, and I explained the assignment a little bit better there. All right, our last assignment. This is our summative assignments. We're 20 points, so this is our test point. So this is the one that'll be worth the most. So let's take a look at that project here. So basically, you're going to basically tell me what you learned about meiosis. So you're going to make a little project showing me that you know everything about meiosis, at least what I expected you to know. So there are many ways you can do this. So your directions are to choose one of the projects below and use those rubrics, which I believe are down here. There they are. So you're going to use those rubrics. Make sure you look at the rubrics so that you have all the information you need in this. And this will be basically the test for the assignment. So in this project, you need to make sure you include all phases of meiosis, including the interphase. So if you notice in my notes, I did have a little short picture on the stages of meiosis. You need to make sure you include something like that in this project. You need to include what crossing over is. Again, I explained that in the notes as well. So make sure that's included. You must also include one disorder that results from problems with meiosis. And when you go through the karyotype activity, there were a few examples of disorders that can take place there, and explain one of those and how it happens, and then discuss how meiosis leads to genetic variability. That is the point of sexual reproduction, is to create genetic variability. So how does meiosis lead to that? So some examples of things you can do. You can create a video. So there's a little thing you can click on and do a little mitosis hand jive, some sort of little video to explain that. You can write a little song on it. And in both those cases, you basically record it and submit that assignment. You could write yourself a little chromosome diary on meiosis. So just have a series of diary entries. Another way you could do that is to do it in a series of tweets of meiosis occurring and write that out as it's being tweeted. You can create a meiosis model. So you can just kind of have a little picture here, take a picture, move it around as things change, and take another picture, and so on. A few examples there. I've seen this done with cookies as well. You could do it that way, and then you could eat your product when you're done explaining it to me and sending you video. A meiosis cartoon. So with mitosis, I give you my sketch notes. You might do something similar with meiosis. create several slides on a paper, draw it out, and explain it that way. You could create a flip book. There's a lot of these on, I don't know, you can search for different flip book type things and create that. So basically your product, you're going to have to either send me some sort of assignment. So make sure you email it to me when you're done. And again, if you have any questions on this, make sure you ask. And check the rubric here so that you got everything here. Make sure you have all the phases and that they're labeled. A lot of people labeling. Make sure you know when crossing over is occurring, what it does, explain it, why it's important, everything there. Variation. How does meiosis create variation? Explain your disorder. So to get full points, you need to demonstrate how the chromosomal error can occur and identify the resulting genetic condition. So how is it going to affect the offspring? And then the last one is, how is your product constructed? So is it legible? Do you explain it well? If you're doing a video, are you explaining it with everything? Not everything, of course, needs to be labeled there. You can kind of label what's going on or point out to it. As long as you're explaining it appropriately, that would be fine. All right, so if you have any questions on the project, make sure you ask. If you think we need to set up a Google Meet for the class, make sure you let me know. If there's enough of you that have interest in that, we could probably set something up for the afternoon on Wednesday to do that. All right, so if you have any questions for this week's material, please let me know. Otherwise, hope you're doing well and everybody's healthy and you're following good social distancing so you stay healthy. That's all I have. So goodbye and see you next week.